Chapter 1661. Muddy Demons. The swamp dragons sorted themselves out, while the beast rangers marveled at Carl's ability to give directions to a group of hatchling beasts that struggled to ever understand multiple-word commands. The advantage of having them bonded to a ranger was that someone would naturally understand their wants and needs. But with Carl around, he could just directly interpret their language and answer them as if they were speaking common. And they understood him back. At first, the majority of the swamp dragons moved to the demons smell funny group, laughing at their own joke. Then, they began to spread out, with over half opting to keep exploring on their own, and 5 of them coming forward to see who wanted to bond with them. That wasn't quite as many as they had eligible rangers. But that was 5 more than had swamp dragons yesterday, and Carl would likely be able to find a comparable subspecies in the other regions of the tiny world. The swamp dragons were the most obvious, but some of the eggs were likely from drakes, as Carl had simply grabbed everything that was left after he cleared out the dragon riders' encampment. Well, now's your chance. Do your best to convince the little ones that you're the right choice, and you can get to bonding. Carl reminded them as everyone stood around awkwardly.
Right.
Well, trying to convince them might not be as easy for us as it is for you. But I think that we can come up with something. One of the rangers, a lanky obsession demon whose hair was dyed almost bubblegum pink, agreed. She knelt down and brought out a selection of meats. These are my favorites. If you like the same ones, there will always be food ready, she explained. The beasts looked dubious. Didn't that mean that they would have to compete with her for food? She wasn't very large, but if they were allies and both wanted the same thing, there would definitely be competition. If we don't like the same thing, that means we have to go hunting twice as often so that we both get what we like. If we pick the same one, we just have to hunt more of the good stuff, she added, encouraging the dragons. Carl relayed the message for her, as the dragons didn't understand well. She was using a skill to help attract the potential partner, but it wasn't as good as what the system provided Carl as part of his class benefits. Now that the swamp dragons understood the dilemma, they were much more agreeable about sharing the food. Hunting for things that didn't taste good sounded horrible. Given the option between that and sharing the food that they did get, they would take sharing every time. Carl noticed that one of the demons and one of the lizard folk rangers stepped back as the others placed their favorite options out for the hatchlings to pick from. Problem? He asked. We're both vegetarians. Putting out plants for swamp dragons who prefer not to even have their food cooked would be a mistake. We will hold off to see if there are other subdragon species that we can bond, the lizard folk woman explained. That makes good sense. You're already hunting meat for a dire wolf, so you might as well look for one partner that likes what you eat. One of the hatchlings toddled over as Carl was talking. He had mostly understood what they were talking about, and saw this as an opportunity. I want the scaly one who won't steal my food, he insisted. Carl laughed. This one says that he doesn't share food. The lizard folk stared down into the hatchling's insistent eyes, then held out a chunk of fish. Do you like fish? I have lots, she offered. The dire wolf didn't like it, so she had never used up the first batch she had picked up. A moment later, one of the hatchlings from the demons smell funny group came over and sniffed at the vegetarian demoness. She still smells funny, he informed Carl. That's natural. Demons smell very similar, no matter what they've been eating. The little one frowned, an action that was really only partially lidding its eyes. A swamp dragon didn't have lips to adjust. It's not a terrible smell. Can we try dunking her in the swamp and see if it makes her smell better? The demoness laughed as she saw the dragon look between her and the water. He wants to throw me in the water, doesn't he?
Yep.
He thinks it will make you smell better. The demoness laughed, right before being tackled into the water by a hatchling swamp dragon. And that's how the whole tempt them with food process ended. The hatchling saw their opportunity and they took it. Team Demons Smell Funny charged and knocked the rangers down into the mud, sending them rolling into the shallow water. The rangers came up, spluttering and laughing as they were swarmed by scaled bodies. Even though most of them didn't object to the smell of demons and lizard folk, they were swamp dragons. Everything smelled better to them when it was at least a little covered in swamp mud. They weren't even picky about their fish landing in the mud. Sure, it was good when fresh, but a little bit of mud didn't hurt anything. The cook had said something about a 3-second rule, but they weren't quite sure what happened 3 seconds after the meat fell on the ground. Presumably, someone else would steal it. But none of them had dared to wait that long and test the theory. After rolling the Rangers through the mud a little and soaking them in swamp water, the hatchlings had a consensus. Demons soaked in swamp mud smelled like demons soaked in swamp mud, not like a blend of the two. But it was fun. So, while they had already determined which of the Rangers they wanted, and that dunking them in the mud didn't fix their scent, they had no intentions of stopping. Chapter 1662. It is time. One by one, the Beast Rangers who had a second space began to bond with their new partners, while the other species of dragons cheered them on. You know, it's a perfect match. Budget brand Carl for budget brand dragons. One of the hatchling mist dragons joked. The swamp dragons frowned at him. They were fairly sure that was an insult, but the dragon was smiling. That made it difficult to tell if nobody else reacted. Remy floated over in spirit snake form and draped herself over Carl. There is only one Carl. It's only natural that everyone else has to pick someone different, she insisted. The mist dragon nodded. There needs to be more Carl. None of these ones can even bond with dragons. I want a cheat code speed growth pet. Remy laughed. I'd be glad that you didn't spawn in as Carl's pet. You'd never get to be in charge that way. Look at me. Even as cool as I am, I'm still a younger sister in the Carl's team. The little dragon nodded. Remy had a point. Being bonded to someone too powerful came with disadvantages. They could actually set rules that you had to obey. Adults were no fun at all, most of the time. He had met Lotus already, but she couldn't really count as an adult. She might be old enough, but surely you had to be larger to count as a real adult. That might be why she was such a cool person. Though now that he thought about it, the one known as Ophelia was pretty cool too. She chopped up meat and threw it to them, instead of making them eat off some boring tray. The Werbear was fun, but she wasn't small. Remy watched as dozens of thoughts crossed the dragon's mind, each clearly visible on his face as his expression shifted. The mist dragon was never going to be a great poker player. The Naga retreated as a pair of swamp dragons began to fight, and Carl moved to separate them. That one's my person. Demons are stupid. Why can't I dunk its head? Carl grabbed one in each hand so that they couldn't do any more than swat each other with their tails. Calm down, both of you. You know trying to drown the Rangers. Good job protecting your person, but now it's time to stop fighting. The two hatchlings flailed their tails at each other for a few more seconds, then realized that it was pointless, and that their claws did nothing to Carl, who had eternal lightning active. In cat demon form, his hand was also large enough to dangle them by their necks, so they couldn't even bite him. Not that they expected it to work any better. While Carl was clearing up the argument, Kara finally made it back to the tiny world with Tenna. The young dragon was still attached to Min, though whose fault that was had not yet been determined. Tenna had the claws of 3 feet latched into the green dragon's clothing, but Min was holding the divine lighting dragon tight, ostensibly so she didn't fall, but mostly so that the wiggly and sugar-loaded hatchling didn't fly off on them. Kara wouldn't mind, but Min had to get back to work and didn't want to get blamed for a hatchling on the loose in the city. The PDA moms would lose their minds if a hatchling that young was seen unattended. Or worse, only accompanied by Kara in badger form. In human form, they just accepted that she was a somewhat responsible teenager. But seeing her in badger form would cancel all that benefit of the doubt. Kara had just stepped out of the spare bedroom in the guild house with her companions when she ran into Tessa. Literally. Well, who do we have here? One wayward young dragon, who still has ice cream on her face. Tenna frantically wiped her mouth. No, I don't. No ice cream at all. Don't know what you're talking about. Tessa laughed. For one, you wiped most of it off on Min's dress, and for another, I can still smell it on your breath. Tenna huffed, then delicately sniffed the air. The red dragon priestess was right. She could still smell the ice cream. It was markedly better than meat breath, but it was definitely going to give away their excursion. You'd better have saved space for dinner. Growing hatchlings can't survive on ice cream alone, no matter what Auntie Kara told you. Tenna looked shocked. Kara was an auntie? She was certain that Kara counted as a big sister. But didn't that mean it was fine to go out places with her? Aunties were authority figures, and you could go places with authority figures. She would have to remember this fact for next time. How did you know that we were gone? You found us as soon as we came back. Tenna asked, attempting to plan for their next escape. The Red Dragon clerics know all. We are born to be matrons to hatchlings like you, who love to escape with their troublemaker aunties. Tessa assured her. Tenna looked shocked. So, you couldn't escape at all? You just had to make a run for it before they could catch you and hope that it wasn't worth chasing you? Kara smiled and patted the little dragon. Fear not, I know all the tricks. She could also nullify the finding spell that the matron had put on all the hatchlings. She had to remove it from herself at least twice a day. All right, come on and eat. It's time. Tessa reminded her. I have so many stories to tell now. I learned about ice cream and dragonberries and chocolate. Do you know about chocolate? Chocolate is amazing. Tenno insisted, then turned her attention to the yard. Oh. Min, bring me there. I need to introduce you to one of my favorite people. Thor. Come over here. I found a person who smells as good as lightning and fresh-cut grass. Thor laughed and waved to Tenna as Min carried her out into the yard. I've already met Min. And I see that you've met my Tessa. Come down the hill. We've got one of the shamans ready to try for tribulation. She's right at the bottleneck, and I'm going to help push her over. Thor explained. Min gasped in shock. They were going to trigger tribulation lightning inside a separate space? Wasn't that insanely dangerous? Chapter 1663. Captured a Min. Min brought Tenna to what she hoped was a safe distance from the stone platform where the shaman was sitting cross-legged. The platform was surrounded by low stone pillars, covered in deep scratches, as if someone had been using them for weapons practice. Min wasn't sure what had happened here, but something had been tearing up that immortal rank stone. Perhaps some of the dragons? It did look like claw marks. Thor smiled at the shaman. All right, I'm going to flood you with immortal energy. That should start to replace the energy in your storage. Once that starts, you're going to crash into the bottleneck, and it should trigger tribulation, as long as you have fully understood your fundamental rule. The shaman smiled. I've got this. I can feel the energy beginning to crackle, but my progression has been stagnant for so long, locked down by the space where we were kept before coming here, that I just can't seem to get it to accept new power. Thor nodded. He had noticed that problem with many of the rescued members. They had been stagnant for so long that their body had adapted to it, and even when given the opportunity, they were not reaching the power bottleneck, even though they did understand their fundamental rule of choice well enough. The power flowed from Thor into the shaman, using her affinity for elemental energy to supercharge her body with power. If they'd told Karl, they could have arranged a proper runic array for the moment, but Thor was pretty sure that it would be fine. She just needed a little push to get past the bottleneck and remind her body that power was meant to grow. Energy entered her body, and clouds began to form in the sky, while Tenna cheered. Divine lightning. She is one of us now. The little dragon proclaimed, throwing her hands in the air, then grabbing Min when she almost toppled over backward. The green dragon laughed at the hatchling's excitement. Tribulation lightning was an extension of her natural element, and it was the first time that the little one would have gotten to see it in person. Her own lightning magic was not on that level yet. The first bolt of lightning struck, and Min cursed as it arced from the platform to Tenna, who was playing with the ball of power like kneading a dough ball. Not all of us are immune to lightning. She reminded the hatchling. What do you mean? I'm not immune to lightning. I'm just playing with it. The lingering energy began to dissipate, and they both got a shock, which made Min's clothes smoke, and Tenna squeak before she began to laugh. See? Zap. 2 lightning strikes hit, and the shaman began to advance, while the dragons from the lake came out to play. It was raining further from the center of the tribulation, and as water element dragons, they were overjoyed to see it for the first time. It did rain in the tiny world, but usually on a regulated schedule, with varying amounts so that the plant life of every region got just enough rain. That was not what was going to happen with the tribulation storm. It was simply pouring rain, centered on the lightning strikes, which were mostly contained by the smashing posts of the training platform. That was why Thor had led her to that particular spot. If any of the strikes missed, the posts would absorb them, and they would contain the energy that naturally wanted to escape from the advancing new immortal. That left more for them to use to advance, and limited the damage to the area. The third volley landed on the shaman, and the storm began to fade. But the process was successful, and she had advanced. That was the first of their homegrown immortals in the tiny world. Proof positive that giving mortals raised in the immortal worlds a class would let them advance to immortality with relative ease and impressive speed. Do it again. Tenna cheered as Thor helped the shaman up to her feet. The lizard folk woman's skin was still smoking from the lightning strikes, and she was definitely looking worse for wear. But she was alive and immortal. Now, she just needed to learn how to form her immortal spirit. That was going to be a big step. But the more important part was that someone was going to have to introduce her to the clan in order for her to get access to the resources that she needed. Perhaps she could stay in here, and someone could bring them to her, using Carl's account to purchase the books and such. But that wasn't the best way to do things, and bringing her to the clan's skill repository wasn't going to happen unless she was a member. So, they were going to have to bring an elder here and explain a few things about what was going on. The question was, which one? Most of the elders were trustworthy. They wouldn't have gotten the position if they were not. But even Min realized that you couldn't just bring anyone into the tiny world. There was so much in this place: valuable resources, hatchling dragons, secret knowledge. If you brought someone who was too easily tempted by greed, it would be a disaster. But if you brought someone who didn't do well with baby dragons, it might be even worse. Carl could likely silence one elder. But having someone know but not be accepting of the oddities of this place would cause them to have to bring someone else in. And as the saying went, once 3 people knew a secret, it was not a secret anymore. Though, technically, there were already far more than 3 people who knew about this place. There were 4 of them in here now, and the 3 brothers also knew about this place. Plus, there might be more that she wasn't thinking of right now. Chapter 1664, Immortal Shaman. After a moment, Min realized that the perfect elder was right under her nose all the time. The warehouse elder was a tundra dragon, a form of ice element dragon. He was also raised by the red dragons, so he would understand about the needs of an orphanage and the chaos that went with it. But he had enough influence that he could introduce the new immortals to the clan leader and to Elder Fersham, who usually did all the introductions. That would be perfect. However, she wasn't intending to do that right away. The new immortal would be fine at home for a day or 2, and there were likely going to be celebrations, and possibly more of them looking to advance now that Thor had proven that he could do it. Plus, she didn't want to put down the hatchling. She never did have hatchlings of her own. She was still a relatively young dragoness, after all. But that didn't mean that a green dragon didn't enjoy them. Min felt a tug at her head and moved Tenna away from her hair, only to find that the small one had pink hair stuck in her teeth. I know that it looks like candy, but it's not edible, she warned. Well, I know that. Now. Tessa laughed at the annoyed tone in the dragon's voice as she realized that Min's hair was dyed with a spell and was not actually a fashionable snack. Given that she was a green dragon, it was possible that she would wear food. Many of the priestesses liked to wear candy necklaces, or even ones with medicinal pills. That way they were always ready when you needed them, and even if you were somehow blocked from using your inventory, you could just bite at the necklace. Instead of letting Tenna go for her hair again, Min handed her a piece of jerky. She thought about giving her one of the sugar-free lollipops, but after the incident with the ice cream spoon, it was probably too soon to give her food with non-edible portions. Now that she thought about it, she didn't actually have to put the hatchling down to go find the elder. He already knew that they were together today, so she could just return to work and go talk to him. Surely, he wouldn't turn down the chance to come see this wonderful place. She was just going to have to get permission from Carl or someone, as she had no idea how she could actually leave without their assistance. Portals were not her specialty, and the room Kara brought them to only had one door. They had entered the apartment, and then the moment the door closed, Kara moved them to this space. It wasn't an altered interior to the apartment that had been done in an entirely different style, and was an order of magnitude smaller than this tiny world. "What are you thinking about?" Thor asked as he saw Min idly petting Tenna, who was still watching the shaman recover. I was thinking that the warehouse elder would be the best option to introduce the new immortals to the clan. He's got no use for more stuff, so he's not going to get all greedy about what he finds here. But he's also one of the highest-ranking elders, and nearly as powerful as Elder Fersham. So, it should go smoothly enough, and Fersham won't mind that someone else is doing the hard work of picking out the new immortals. He's usually got to go on trips to go find them. That's a lot of messages from elders on mortal worlds, and time out of his day. Min explained. Thor nodded. And we can bring them directly to him instead. All we need to do is bring him to the apartment door, which is only a few minutes from the warehouse. Min smiled. It's also on the way to the docks, and he's there every day to meet with Elder Malcolm and the sea merchants anyhow. Tessa laughed as she tried, and failed, to remove the hatchling from Min's dress. Well, it will certainly make our lives easier. As long as he understands and doesn't get any weird ideas. Most of the people here were either held as prisoners by immortals or shunned by society. Just going into an immortal world is going to be traumatic for half of them, and that's before initiation. She's scrappier than she looks, but she's not a combat specialist. She went for the healing and ranged elemental magic route of shamanistic magic. Tessa reminded her. Min nodded. If we're picking her up, we can arrange for someone less vicious to do the challenge. It might put her at the bottom of the rankings, and some of the perverts will get the idea that they can get away with a bit of pushing. But once everyone knows that she's not going for it, it shouldn't be an issue. You know how the clan is, they're pretty mellow most of the time. Tessa laughed, and Min slapped her forehead. Right, I forgot. You don't know what the clan is like. But you will soon. You're going to be mythic in days, and then it's only a matter of time. Tessa sighed, then looked up at the sky with a longing look. I know you're right, but it sure does feel like I've fallen so far behind, you know? Dana got married and bonded to Karl, which dragged her power level up to his. Now Thor has advanced and Naksha. It's down to just the three of us at the totem rank. She explained. At least the hatchlings still respect you. Min offered helpfully. If I can ever pry her off you, so I can take her for dinner. That was the magic word, and Tenna willingly switched perches. She would go where there was food, no complaints at all. If Tessa had led with that part, she wouldn't have clung to the green dragon. She had been worried that Tessa was going to take her away from the fun stuff. Chapter 1665. How to Inform the Others. Now that Tessa had the hatchling, Min turned to Thor to get her questions answered. Is there a way out of here? I believe that talking to the warehouse elder will be the best option for the hatchlings and for the new immortals. He can take care of everything for you and ensure that the privacy of the spot is maintained. Other than him, I'm not sure who else can be trusted to know about a space like this and not cause troubles for Karl. He's powerful, but compared to the power increase once you reach the ascended stage, it's nothing. She explained. Thor nodded. I can send you out into the apartment. I can probably come with you as well. Tessa will be busy with the little ones, and we've got Birdie, one of the red dragons, watching over our nest. Min smiled. You know, if you go out alone, people will think that you're one of the new immortals as well, so they might challenge you for a spot on the rankings. Thor snorted derisively. That shouldn't be an issue. Dueling a behemoth isn't as easy as people might think. Min smiled. Well, if you're not concerned about it, we can go. Where is the door, anyhow? There isn't a permanent one to your world. There is one that leads to our mortal world, but because that one is permanent, and we don't want anyone who might manage to sneak into the apartment from finding them, or the stuff in this space, it's sealed on that side. If the world were opened, we could bring in more immortal realm energy, but it would also allow anyone with sharp enough senses to detect the tiny world. They might not be able to easily get to it if the entrance was in the warded apartment. But that doesn't mean they wouldn't try to find a way around it, or force a new way into the space, once they'd found it. It's just safer to keep it private. Min nodded. That makes sense. I don't really know how those things work, but if that's what you've decided, it sounds like good logic. So, how do we leave? Thor laughed. Any of Karl's team members, or Dana, can just come in and out at will. So we just drag people in and out with us most of the time. Sometimes we will open a portal for appearances, but that's more of a Karl and Dana thing. I don't use portals. Kara and Remy could for sure. But Thor didn't think that Ray could, and he couldn't either. Hawk never used other people's magic at all, but there was a chance that either Leo or Tion could open the portal if they tried. Opal certainly could, but she moved between worlds so easily that she never needed to. Thor placed a hand on Min's shoulder and moved the dragon out into the apartment with him. All right, let's get this done. Do you know where your elder is? Min nodded.
He's at work right now.
But he will definitely leave early if we show up.
Oh.
I totally forgot that I'm supposed to be at work too. I will have to give my coworkers extra snacks to make up for this. I got so distracted by baby dragons that I forgot I was supposed to be doing things. Thor laughed. It's a common affliction. Hatchlings are adorable. But if you need to go to work, I can bring your elder back. Min shook her head. This is more important. They will understand that I needed the day off. They left the apartment, headed for the warehouse, but just around the first corner, they found the way blocked by a group of lower-ranking clan members, ones that even Min outranked based on the Spirit Immortal charts. Min, I hear that you've been sneaking around with new immortals. You, stranger. I challenge you to a duel for placement. The largest of the men announced. I don't think that's a good idea. We're on the way to talk to the elders. Min offered. Oh, this won't take long. Besides, we've got a healer on hand. He will recover from his initiation soon enough, the young man declared. Thor smiled. I suppose that we can spare a minute or two before seeing Elder Douglas at the warehouse. The challenger sent out a clan message, informing them that there would be an initiation duel at the arena in 5 minutes. That caught the elders' attention, as they hadn't brought anyone new into the clan in the last few days. If someone was challenging an outsider over a misunderstanding, they might need to break up a real fight. The first elder to find them was Socrate, the Alchemy Hall elder, who simply burst into laughter and ushered them towards the arena. Oh, this should be wonderful. Apprentice Remy has told me all about her big brother. It's good to meet you for the first time, Thor. I am Socrate, of the Alchemy Hall. Thor shook his hand. It's a pleasure to meet you as well. Sister Remy has many new things to show you. Our recent outing was a brilliant success. She's managed to find over a dozen new species for her greenhouse. If the challenger were a bit smarter, he would have realized something was wrong. But the elder talked to Thor as if he had never met him before, so he should definitely be new to the clan, which meant he was a valid challenge target. He just hadn't realized yet that Thor was a behemoth, and that divine beasts generally reached immortality with their immortal spirits fully formed. It was just the nature of the beast species. As they made their way to the arena, Elder Douglas joined them from the warehouse, along with both of the other clerks on duty.
Min.
I didn't expect to see you again today after seeing you with a hatchling. Did you come out for the challenge? He asked. I came out to see you. There are some things that Thor and Carl need to talk to you about. A new shaman, for one. And some other warehouse-related things. The elder sighed. I was afraid of that. The last time that they called me to deal with Carl's warehouse-related issues, it was absolute chaos. Mostly because Carl had simply upgraded everything right in front of him and the other elders, using that new skill. If he was planning to keep doing that on a larger scale, Douglas was definitely going to appoint Min as liaison so that he didn't have to do it himself. Chapter 1666. The Warehouse Elder. The warehouse elder moved to walk beside Min. What is this you're saying about a new shaman? Are they a craftsperson? He asked. No, a new immortal to be inducted into the clan. However, their circumstances are a bit unique and related to Carl. I don't know how much you know already, so I will let him explain once you've seen him again. I was hoping to bring you back to his apartment, but someone saw Thor and challenged him to a ranking battle. The elder blinked slowly. Did anyone warn him that the behemoth was going to humiliate him in public? Min shook her head. It was an abrupt thing, and we didn't have a chance. He'll find out soon enough, though. Actually, I'm a bit curious to see how Thor fights a duel. He's usually a knight protecting his red dragon priestess wife. But as far as actual duel-type combat skills, I don't know what he has. Especially in humanoid form. They reached the arena, and Min followed the elder into the stands, while Thor went to the sand with the challenger. The stands were already filling with all the curious clan members. The new guy didn't look like much, part elf or fae, going by the ears and green hair. But too big to be most elf species, unless the other half was something very muscular. In contrast, the challenger was even more muscular, but half a head shorter, and wearing highly fashionable battle robes, instead of Thor's plain tunic. Elder Socrate took the referee's stand and raised his hands to silence the crowd. We won't waste much time waiting for the crowd today. The stands are filling nicely. On the north side, we have Romano, Blood Knight, rank 218 on the Spirit Immortal ranking. On the south side, we have Thor, an unranked paladin. Thor waved happily to the crowd, who cheered for the new arrival. He just looked so happy and approachable that they almost felt bad about the initiation process. Though, Romano was much weaker than his ego told him he was. It might actually be fairly decent for Thor to duel him and settle into a lower spot in the clan right into the start. Contestants, cast your buffs. Thor smiled as he stacked haste, brutality, crushing blows, bestial raiment, inspiration, and eternal lightning to armor himself up and buff his speed to an insane level. Then he used bulwark to enhance his shield and created a club with holy weapon that he wrapped a tribulation chain around. He'd seen Kara create a barbed wire-wrapped bat before, and it looked perfect for duels. Min howled with laughter as she realized that the bat was an epic-grade control spell that would cause stunning and paralysis on top of massive lightning damage. But Thor was also being forced to hold back. As he couldn't use his best spells without switching back to a four-legged body, he couldn't use War Beast or Greater Beast form. While his opponent flexed and showed off blade skills for the crowd, Thor simply slammed his shield into the ground and spread bulwark in an arc in front of himself, then nodded to the referee. Oh, this is going to be fun. The Life Steal class against a lightning bulwark-equipped paladin. Elder Douglas joked. Min giggled. That's an impenetrable bulwark behemoth. Then she raised her hand to call a bookie over to place her bet on the match. 10 clan credits says that Romano doesn't even break Thor's defensive barriers. She insisted. The bookie laughed. All right, we will take that bet. The Blood Knight was an offense-heavy class. They were excellent in duels, and their damage output was much higher than a paladin or warrior. Begin, Elder Socrate announced, and the arena immediately filled with light as Thor activated Circle of Protection, followed by Consecrated Ground. The holy damage hit the Blood Knight, and the elders in attendance sighed. This fight was already over, and nobody had even realized it. The system capped damage reduction at about 80%, but in Thor's case, that was 80% reduced, and he would ignore the first 10% of his health pool, plus a point for every day that he had been alive. Nothing that Romano could do would even scratch him. Not that he didn't try. The golden light was tinged with red as Romano flared with power and activated Deadly Burst, a flurry of attacks that sent lightning sparks up from Thor's shield, crackling in the air as Bulwark absorbed the damage. Then, Thor's arm flashed down, and Romano was driven to his knees by the lightning damage and stun effect of Tribulation Chains. Gods that hurt, he muttered as he rolled back and tried to regroup. The paladin was insanely fast. But Thor was using both haste and humming a tune that activated the bardic skill of Inspiration, which added another 40% to his speed. Thor advanced slowly, despite his immense speed. He wanted to corner his opponent and pummel him into submission, since they were in an enclosed space where he couldn't run away. Romano desperately poured power into his attacks, his blades slamming into bulwark a dozen times a second. But the spell wasn't even flickering, as Thor constantly added mana to keep it stable. The crowd had fallen silent as they realized what was happening. Someone had found the ultimate group tank and brought him to the clan. If you were taking a Spirit Immortal group to the dungeon, this was the man that you wanted to have on the front line. Even the mightiest of dungeon opponents would be helpless against his implacable advance. Unfortunately for Romano, he wasn't doing any damage to recover life. With the constant holy damage he was taking, his natural regeneration was worthless. Then, with every strike, he took lightning element backlash from Thor's defenses. He shifted left, hoping to find a way around the bulwark. It was focused forward, so if he could get behind Thor, there might be a chance to deal some actual damage. Unfortunately, Thor was much faster than he was, and a side arm swing of the bat sent Romano flying. It's a bit like watching a dungeon boss marching through the damage classes after the tank dies. Elder Douglas whispered to Min and the others sitting in the Elders section. Elder Fersham smiled softly. Like Carl, that one has an epic grade constitution. Plus, he's a behemoth. It literally is a world boss mopping the floor with a solo damage dealer at this point. Romano should just be thankful that Thor isn't using any actual damage skills. Douglas looked startled. You can see his nameplate? I don't see anything for him at all. It's like he doesn't have a system interface. Fersham shrugged. I have a skill to get information about beasts. He's bonded to Carl, so he won't show a standard name to some systems. If you've got a similar one to his, you should be able to see his name, though. Min nodded. I can see his name and this special thingy, like Carl has. Apparently, most of the crowd can't. The betting favored Romano pretty heavily. Chapter 1667. A Second Challenge. Romano stumbled as Thor hit him again, and the behemoth chuckled as he realized just how satisfying it was to use a bat instead of a sword in combat. It was far less likely to seriously injure or kill the enemy, which was counterproductive in a dungeon. But in a situation like this, he just needed to subdue his target. However, what the crowd saw was an invincible paladin swatting a blood knight around the arena like a rag doll. Only when Romano passed out from the pain did Elder Socrate finally call the match. Winner Thor. If anyone wishes to challenge him for a higher position, please enter the arena now. A few of the other spirit immortals considered challenging. They had ideas how to get through those barriers. But what if they lost? Wouldn't they just end up humiliated, like Romano was? It was better to let Thor stay at the rank he was. Thor slung the bat over his shoulder, and then smiled when a dragon hopped down onto the sand, transforming as he landed. Oh, we're going in four-legged forms? I can do that. The dragon laughed, then paled when Thor transformed into his natural state, then cast Warbeast to improve his constitution and add armor. Thor was still shrunk compared to his full size, but he was every bit as large as the immortal sand dragon. Oh, this is going to be messy. Min laughed. Thor didn't have teeth. His form was herbivorous. But he had a brutally sharp beak, large enough to bite the leg off a dragon if he could catch it. Plus, with those 3 massive horns, he wasn't going to be a helpless target. Worse, Warbeast gave him a massive spiked ball on the end of his tail. If that hit, even a dragon was going to regret their life choices that led them to this moment. In fact, the fight hadn't started, and already he was regretting getting in the ring. Min waited patiently for the fight to start, then hummed happily as a small moor cat hopped in her lap. And who might you be? I am Shade. I wanted to see the Carl's friend fighting. I brought my pet elf to the show. Min gave him a confused look until she saw the young girl searching the crowd for her cat. She waved Anila up to the elders section, and the girl came over, apologizing profusely. Sorry, he doesn't like to listen, and he insisted on watching the fight. She whispered, so she didn't interrupt the elder's conversation. Elder Fersham picked her up and put her on a seat between him and Min. Don't worry about it. How is your training going? I heard that the Carl helped you get an advanced class. Anila sighed. Forest Stalker is a wonderful class. The issue is Shade. He doesn't listen at all unless we're working. The cat shrugged. That's not how it works. The pet elf doesn't get to give orders. Elder Fersham chuckled quietly. We'll have to discuss that later. I am fairly sure that you are bonded to her, not the other way around. But what is that you're wearing around your neck? This? It's a gift from the Carl. A Villa stone so that I can put my elf away when we're not working. Fersham nodded. He saw what the problem was. The monster man treated the cat and the elf equally, which gave the cat the idea that it was in charge of this relationship. As such, it behaved like it was the ranger, while the elf was the bonded pet. I will find a proper tutor for the two of you. They'll get you all set up for faster growth. He informed the cat. Thank you. You're not bad for a human. Fersham tilted his chin to the match. The fight is about to start. The behemoth and the dragon were assessing each other silently as they waited for Elder Socrate to start the match. They had both fully buffed themselves, and now it was just mind games before the fight started. Begin. The two charged at each other, and claws scraped at barriers over horns. Then, the sand dragon twisted to the side, avoiding the charge, and trying to attack Thor's flank. Only, the tail ball came whistling in his direction, moving so fast that the air shrieked in complaint. The dragon blocked it with a barrier spell, which shattered under the impact. Then, from the sky over the area, divine lightning flashed, hitting the dragon directly. Thor rumbled in amusement as the dragon twitched. Fighting a lightning element behemoth, when you were earth element, and naturally wanted to ground his attacks. Foolish. The dragon growled, and created a defensive layer over his body, approximating glass, so that he was no longer a lightning rod for Thor's attacks. Earth might attract lightning, but it could also be an excellent insulator. The two scaled combatants clashed again, and the sand dragon was tossed in the air. Not a major issue for a flying species. But the arena's space was limited, and Thor's back feet lifted off the ground as he spun and whipped his tail around. The spiked ball hit the dragon in the side, sending him crashing into the barriers so hard that they flickered. Thor didn't hesitate, casting more lightning as he charged. Sand swirled in defense, blocking the attack and tearing at Thor's scales. The dragon grabbed his horns, trying to wrestle with the behemoth, but Thor was strong enough to whip him around, lifting his whole body off the ground. The behemoth had released some of the restrictions on his size, making him big enough that the dragon couldn't get leverage to hold him in place. Then Thor managed to get him off balance again and stomped on the toppled dragon with his front feet. Claws coated in attack skills scraped at his barriers, and Bulwark fell. But Eternal Lighting was still up, and the dragon was looking much more lumpy than usual. "Stop. The match is over," Elder Socrate called. The dragon looked up in annoyance, then shifted and coughed up blood. He had been so enraged that he hadn't noticed the behemoth had crushed his ribs and nearly stomped him to death. Chapter 1668. Bring them home. Thor transformed back and changed the target of consecrated ground so that the dragon counted as an ally and the spell would heal him. There were already healers coming to do most of the repairs, but he didn't want to accidentally kill his sparring partner. Fighting the dragon was fun, they just needed more room to actually battle. The arena wasn't enough for their size. Once his opponent was healed enough to be mobile, Thor helped him stand, then brushed the arena sand off his back with a happy smile. "Thanks for the match. I haven't had a good sparring partner in a while." The dragon gave him an incredulous look. Did the behemoth think that he was going to volunteer to do that again? Not a chance. "You're quite skilled. Thank you for enlightening me," he replied instead. Thor's day was fully made at that point. Not only did he get to spar with someone new, they even complimented him. It was a good day. Now, they just needed to explain the situation to the Elder and bring him over to the tiny world so that he could see what was going on, and their mission would be complete. Nobody else chose to challenge Thor once they had noticed that he simply shrugged off every attempt to damage him. It was going to take a special skill of some sort, or a specialty damage-dealing class to soar him out properly, and none of them were looking forward to getting beat up in the arena today. Especially not the ones who had just lost a load of money betting against him. Thor left the arena's sands to the cheers and congratulations of those who had wagered on him. Most of them felt a bit guilty about their wagers, as they had realized that most of the attendees couldn't see Thor's system tags. But the money, oh, that made all the guilt in the world worth it. Even Min was basking in the luxury of her win. She had wagered 10 clan credits, a decent but not excessive sum, and it had paid out 3-1. So, she now had 30 clan credits at her disposal, enough to keep her happy for months. At least, as long as Carl didn't come into the warehouse with something else that she absolutely had to have. Being that man's friend had to be expensive, given his propensity to keep coming up with new items that made everyone else in the clan look destitute. "Elders, good day." Thor greeted Douglas and Frasham politely, while Elder Socrate came down from the referee's stand to join the group. "Congratulations on your win, Thor. Now, Min says that there is something that we need to see. We have a few minutes now, so why don't we all go take care of the issue?" Elder Frasham replied. Thor nodded. They hadn't planned to grab 3 elders, but it should be fine.
Sure.
They're just at the apartment, so it's only a few minutes of walking. Then, once we get there, it might take a bit to explain the issue. Thor explained. The elders immediately recognized that it was something that Thor didn't want to talk about in public, or perhaps that Karl had ordered him not to. So, they didn't ask any more questions while they were still surrounded by other clan members. They just followed Thor and Min to the apartment, while Shade dragged Anila behind them. There was definitely fun stuff happening, and the cat had no intentions of missing out on it. Anila was curious as well, but she didn't have the courage to simply nominate herself to tag along on a meeting with the elders. If it wasn't for Shade, she would have simply gone home to study and practice her skills. She was getting better, but with her late start, she had some time left before she was up to the standard that her mother demanded. Thor led them inside and picked up Anila, while Min used the excuse to grab Shade and bury her face in his fur. "Just take my hand for a second. I will bring us to Karl," Thor explained. He could do it without contact, but with more powerful immortals, contact would guarantee that they didn't wander off on him. They may have skills to move between spaces, and he didn't want them ending up somewhere else in the space, where they might invade something private or disturb the hatchlings. "All right, here we are." The three elders stared around in wonder as they saw the tiny world, while Karl gave Thor a curious stare, wondering why he had brought the three men into the space. They could have introduced the shaman in the apartment. Thor just shrugged. It was easier to explain when they saw it for themselves. "First things first, we've got a new shaman. She just reached immortality, and we would like to introduce her to the clan. In order to advance beyond the entry to immortality, it will be easier if she has direct access to the clan's resources." Karl began. Elder Fersham nodded. "I see what you mean. This space is quite the spell. Tiny world, I believe. A rather obscure bit of magic, as not many can use it. I see that there are many more about to advance as well. So, I do hope that you have a safe space for the tribulation that isn't going to cause lingering damage to your pocket dimension." Karl nodded. "I will take care of it, it's not an issue. The tribulation doesn't damage the tiny world itself. Remy, could you please go recover Elder Socrate for me? He's headed for the flower gardens." Elder Fersham laughed as he realized the alchemy hall elder had left them, and that Remy had been draped over Karl's shoulders. She was napping, and he had noticed that she was more than a decoration until Karl spoke to her. The Naga gave him a happy wave, then darted off through the grass to find her mentor. She had so much to show him now that he was here. Chapter 1669. Socrates gets distracted. They'll be a while. Remy just got new stuff for her greenhouse, and the alchemy hall is going to want to see it. It's mostly stuff for her new pills and potions, and you know how the elder gets about new things. Karl explained to the elders. "Oh, we know. For hundreds of years, we've known how he is. It looks like you've got this whole place set up for some specific purpose, though. Is it all magical resource generation?" Elder Fersham asked. "No, I actually modified it a bit, because we have a large number of hatchling dragons here. That's why we needed you. Being a dragon yourself, you'll understand the issue with having an orphanage raising children who are going to reach immortality during puberty. Most of the caretakers should be immortals by then, but the rambunctious toddler years are going to be problematic. Plus, there are things we need to teach them that I'm not sure our first batch of volunteers will know." "Who did you get?" Elder Fersham asked, already aware of the specialties of most of the clan, based on their shopping habits. "We've got Nyan, Jeff, Brother Chin, and probably Min. I don't see her leaving voluntarily now that she's found baby dragons." The warehouse elder laughed. "Occupational hazard of being a green dragon cleric. Well, technically she's a druid, but it's close enough when she is a green dragon to begin with. I can likely arrange for some teachers once the little ones start to grow more than the people here can handle. That should be a few years, so you'll have a bit of time to prepare for them. Is this space still adjusting in power? I can tell that the mana is quite dense, but it's a mix of two realms." Karl nodded. "It is. We've still got plenty of mortals here, and without the mortal mana, they can't advance properly. Without access to mortal mana that their body can process, they will grow to the peak of mythic, then hit a bottleneck that they can't overcome because their bodies were designed to process mana that doesn't exist around them anymore. So, I keep it up and add immortal energy to the mix. It lets everyone advance smoothly, even me. It should also let the young dragons grow up big and strong. But that brings us back to why you're here. We will need stuff. Training materials for immortal dragons, study guides for toddlers if the process is different, and anything else I am not thinking of right now. The matron likely knows better than I do, but with so many hatchlings, she's a bit busy at the moment. While they were talking, the perpetually escaping black dragon hatchling came over with Tenna the divine lightning hatchling right beside him. She had seen him sneaking down the mountain, and that meant that something fun was about to happen. Only good things happened when you managed to escape the matron. Until she caught you. Hi Carl. I sensed combat on Thor and came to hear the new stories. The little black dragon explained. I came because he was doing fun things. Tenna added. Elder Douglas laughed. And now I see how it would be chaotic with multiple species of hatchlings. How many are there in total? A little over 100, including the subdragon species. There are over a dozen different species, as I recovered the eggs from a dragon hunter camp.
Carl explained.
The elder made a protective gesture, which both hatchlings tried to mimic. For Sham laughed, as they mimicked the warehouse elder. It's not a spell or a skill, just a gesture to ward off bad luck. What are your names, little ones? I am Tenna, and this is Ewan. He doesn't usually talk to people or come out in the sun. Ewan shrugged. It was bright out here, and there were too many people. But he needed to know who tried to fight with Thor. His affinity for death said that it was a serious fight, and not just practice like their standard daytime sparring sessions, where nobody's barriers usually broke. He climbed up Thor's leg, as it was easier than flying, and settled on the big man's shoulder to wait for the explanation. That left Tenna with an issue. She didn't want a stranger touching her, but Min was already holding a cat. Carl's turn it was. Elder Douglas smiled as the hatchlings instinctively found a stronger person to hold them while they napped. As much as they didn't want to admit it, both of them were tired from their exertion. It was a long trip down here from the top of the hill, and they had flown most of the distance. All right, I see what the issue is here. You've got a shaman to introduce to the clan, and then you're going to have at least a dozen more new immortals in the next year or so. That's bound to raise some suspicions, no matter how we look at it. They all know each other, and since we usually pick them one at a time from the mortal worlds, there are very rarely pairs like Carl and Dana who know each other. That many all from one place is going to raise questions about what sort of mortal world can produce so many immortals and how to get to it. More than a few of the clan members will want to explore where the new members came from, mostly to see what sort of resources it has. And it won't be difficult to sense the lingering mortal world energy on them. So you can either keep them in here for some time after they advance, or we come up with an excuse that everyone is going to stick to. That's Elder Forsham's jurisdiction, so it's good that we brought him with us. Then he looked into the distance, where Elder Socrate and Remy were discussing magical plants. Bringing that one hadn't helped anything. Remy disagreed. He knew all sorts of things about the plants that she had recovered from their most recent trip, and she hadn't planted all the ones in the tiny world in the optimal locations. They had been in poor shape when she got them, so she had nothing to refer to. But the elder had memorized nearly every sort of magical plant that might possibly be useful to an alchemist, and all their known mutations. Chapter 1670. Impressive Tiny World. Elder Forsham extended his senses to see who all was in this space, and then paused as he found much more than he had expected. It wasn't all refugees like the shaman, who was still branded with an aura from another immortal world. She was definitely held captive for most of her life in that world, before whatever brought her to Carl had happened. There were also people who had grown up in the same mortal world that Carl and his team had come from, and he had a sneaking suspicion that this place might still be linked to that world in some way. If Carl was still accessing the mortal realm, the power level of that place was going to skyrocket, just based on the cast-offs of his crafting. What he couldn't know was that the Darklight host didn't rely on his cast-offs. They had mythic craftsmen already, and Carl wasn't selling immortal rank gear to the guild, as per his agreement with Ozoff. Technically, it wasn't prohibited to sell to the guild members themselves, but realistically none of them actually needed it, as just having epic-grade mythic rank gear was more than enough to take care of everything that they were facing in that world. If there was another invasion, or they were threatened to an extent that they couldn't deal with, then Carl would ship them better stuff. Other than the fact that they're still mortals, you basically have your own clan here. Or, if you were one of the consumption clans, you would be set to produce a supreme ranked leader within a generation. Elder Fersham noted. A consumption clan?
Carl asked.
I suppose that you don't know the term. It refers to a form of skill that consumes the power of those weaker than you to fuel your progression. The general rule of thumb is that it takes the full power and souls of 1,000 void rank immortals to bring one of their leaders from ascendance to supremacy. Now, that's not realistic, as they would only be a bit weaker than him. But 5 times that many spirit immortals would be about right. That's one of the more common uses of these separate spaces. Push everyone up to a certain level, then have them work hard to progress while you siphon off their gains. As you can likely guess, it's considered one of the evil techniques, but many systems include a skill of a similar nature. The Elder explained. Behind Carl, Kara burst into laughter, while Thor turned away and whistled innocently. You know of the method, then? Elder Douglas asked rhetorically. Obviously they did. Carl actually has a sword that steals soul and life essence to fuel his power. It's not just a system skill, it's a physical item where we come from. But he's too pure and innocent to have thought about farming people for their power. He doesn't even use the blade in combat most of the time unless it's a duel, or he doesn't like the person, she explained. Seriously? Carl uses a soul-stealing weapon? I wouldn't have guessed, given his personality. Does it not corrupt with use? Or is it a matter of time? Carl shook his head. No. The sword purifies the energy before transferring it. So it doesn't matter what the life essence or soul energy came from, only that I challenged and defeated something higher ranked than I was. It does collect from everything that dies around me, but it's not the same level of gain. Something like using an underranked instead of an over-rank potion. Elder Socrate jogged back over. I heard the word potion. Douglas shook his head in dismay. Of course, that's the only part that you heard. We were talking about soul-stealing weapons and the effect of lower-ranked energy versus over-rank energy. The alchemist nodded. That's a good comparison. Carl cleared his throat. Now, back on topic. How are we going to introduce all these new immortals to the clan? Because now that we know how to push them past the bottleneck, they're all going to want to do it, and the Beast Rangers just got new pets that they will need resources for. Beast Rangers? Elder Fersham asked. Oh, they're an advanced ranger class that can bond magical beasts. A bunch of them gained a skill to get a second bonded beast, and added swamp dragons to their existing dire wolves. When we helped them get their class, they all got the same beasts because that's what was available. Now, they're all about to reach immortality with their wolves. But the swamp dragons are hatchlings, so they'll need some time. The Elder sighed. I regret asking. That will become a common sentiment if you keep asking questions. You can look at it as a wonderful opportunity for the clan, though. They're all excellent combatants with versatile skills and not warriors. Plus, when the dragons grow up, they're excellent tanks as well as mounts. The Elder's expression said that he was thinking deeply, so nobody interrupted him. Then, he stared at some of the lizard folk who had come to congratulate their sister. Wait, are these all Darklight Host Guild members? He asked. Yes? We inducted them, so that we could send them to dungeons on behalf of the guild. It's the only way that they could build up the skill points that they needed after starting at mythic rank.
Carl explained.
And you don't see how that might possibly be an issue?
No.
Elder Socrate patted his counterpart on the shoulder. Let me handle this, I have experience. You see, if we bring in a bunch of randoms, that's one thing. But he's not the only one who is going to notice that they're all your guild members. And what do you think is going to happen when the clan sees you bring dozens of immortals from your guild into the clan? Half of them will think you're staging a coup, and the other half are going to think that you have a secret skill to improve progression speed. Kara raised one finger, as if she wanted to speak, and Elder Socrate laughed. Let me guess? He does have one, doesn't he? Not just one. But we have a really good guild skill. Who would want to leave?